Hey, hi and hello, welcome back to another episode of Aussie Roll Call. I'm one of your hosts, Dan, and today I'll be joined by one of our co-hosts, Stevie. Today we're interviewing Sasa, owner of a gaming cafe in Melbourne, Australia called Pause Menu. We dive into why she opened the cafe, some of the hurdles she's encountered, her undying love of horror, and a couple of very special announcements.
Thanks, Dan. And in addition to that interview, we're also bringing you a Vox Pop from way back at the Indies tabletop event in Port Phillip from last year. This one is with the amazing Lee Cope. And we'll also bring you some great news about an upcoming Kickstarter from the folks over at Storybrewers Roleplaying and a really cool initiative happening at a local library in Melbourne. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Welcome back to Aussie Roll Call. On today's episode, I am here with my co-host Dan and our lovely guest Sasa. So, Sasa, for those of our audience who might not know who you are and what you do you want to just quickly describe for them those things?
Hey, thank you so much, Stevie and Dan, for having me on. So yes, as Stevie has mentioned, I'm Sasa, and I co-own a board games and TTRPG bar in Fitzroy, Melbourne. And I also run a few TTRPGs, things that I write, and also some modules that other people have written.
Excellent. How did you first get into TTRPGs? Let's start there.
I think I've gotten into TTRPGs like everyone has gotten into TTRPGs. Someone is the guru, the sensei, that person who decides I am going to be the GM. Or that they have that, 5 to 10 years experience and they're looking for a new group. And I decided to raise my hand and say, hey, I've heard of TTRPGs, but I've never done it before. Can I try? And I think like 90% of people, it was D&D. That was my first TTRPG, and it was one of the big modules. And yeah, I haven't looked back since. But now, because it was the typical standard action-adventure type of module, but now I love horror. And that, I think, is what I run these days.
Wonderful. I do want to dive into that change. But before we do, in your intro, you mentioned that you own and run a board game / TTRPG cafe in Naarm in Melbourne. I have been there many times. I've taken friends there. I've taken dates there. It is a great location. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your cafe?
So, partner and I, this is pre-pandemic, we were having a look around and we said, there's a couple of spaces here and there, but we really want to put our own spin on it. We had so many ideas for events that we could run, the communities we wanted to bring together and to foster. And then we got married in 2019 with the idea that we will open the space, Pause Menu, in 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020. So a year, 2 years later, we decided now was the time, and we opened the space, and we really wanted to create inclusive space, a space where I think the pandemic really broke up a few groups, as well as made us a little bit more homebodies, a little bit, you might call it dramatic, but I think a little bit more isolated and a little bit more hesitant to go out. But I also think that it brought about the idea of, wow, I've been at home for so long. I really value person-to-person spaces. So we decided that, we wanted to bring together people who, were feeling a little bit, that sense of isolation or the break from that TTRPG, and a space that says, we're friendly, we're open. If you're a beginner, if you're a veteran, as long as you're not a dick to people. So for our bar, it really was just, or our cafe bar, it really was just about setting up that kind of community and bringing hopefully some interesting events that people don't see around at accessible price points, and a lot of the times actually free events.
So starting an event-based cafe/bar at the very beginning of COVID, obviously most people who attempted such a thing have not survived. We are now recording this at the very end of 2024, and pause menu is still going, which I think is testament to just how well you have built that community, because I think without that community aspect, it wouldn't have lasted as long as it has through such a particularly trying time. Would you agree with that?
I think it goes a little bit both ways, that Brenton and I, we put it out there, and it really is, the people answering back to say, yes, we really want something like this. So in a way, we have been very lucky that, that the people have responded so positively to our ideas and our space. And I think we've got some great communities that are also looking for spaces to run their events. And, we definitely say, hey, if it fits within our four walls, we're happy to see it, really.
And I think that's a really great thing, because your pause menu is one of the few places that has non-D&D events. So I've seen like Call of Cthulhu nights and other nights as well. So it's just nice to have that variety, whereas so many people go running back to the Hasbro game for the most part.
It is a little bit of a push and pull, because D&D is the name that I will say people who are outside of the TTRPG community, they at least have heard of it. I think Stranger Things did wonderful things for that product. And I think that is the reason why we see it around, because it does have that big pull, especially because in Australia and even in NARM, we do see, where we have one of the biggest populations, there isn't, how do I say, there is interest for other TTRPGs, but not to the same extent that D&D has.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I especially like one of the times that I was there, I think it was around October, you were also running Introduction to D&D, but then obviously you supplement those with other TTRPGs. So you're kind of exposing your audience to, hey, here's your entry point that you might already know about, but also there's a whole big world of other things too. And the fact that that all exists under one roof and in one friendly location, I think is a really great way to get people comfortable with the idea of maybe trying something that's not D&D, for example. I think you do a really great job setting up the expectation of what the space is, and that possibly repels people who are not open to what the space is all about, if you know what I mean. Like when you first walk in, there's like the cute little cafe area, bar area, and then like there's all the board games and stuff that you can see. I know in the bathroom, there's like the code of conduct posters, which I think are really good. Was there any inciting incident in putting those code of conduct posters up, or was it just experience from being at other venues or what you'd heard online?
So we give folks just a talk, a chance to kind of address, improve their behavior. And if it doesn't, then we unfortunately just say that we're just not the space for you. Because I know that maybe a lot of people say, or the common thing is 3 strikes, but I really don't think it's fair on the community to have to endure someone's bad behavior. Like one person can bring down the mood of even a big group. So because we host big games that can have up to 15 people, so not TTRPGs, other events. So we do have to think of the fact that, wow, for one person's, unacceptable behavior can bring down the mood for 15 or 20 people. It's not so, it is amazing how kind of interconnected we all are. Something, mammal, something, I think.
It's really great to hear just how in tune you are with like the needs of your community as a whole and making sure that your space is meeting the goals that you set out to when you were planning and designing it to be this thing. And it's really interesting to hear about how you've made that happen in practice.
So my name is Lee Cope.
And Lee, what's your best gaming table snack?
I mean, the packet of chips is kind of like the old classic, but it is, see, I used to do a lot of podcast recordings. So the thing is, they are very noisy snacks.
Yeah.
So I think whatever it is, my best gaming table snack is both like not messy, it doesn't make your fingers salty or greasy, and it's a silent snack. I'm not sure what that is though. I'm not sure that
I was going to say
exists.
M&Ms, but I don't know if they're silent enough for your purposes.
No. You have to like be a Werther's or something you can suck on, or like a...
Excellent.
Yeah,
A
the
lot of thought into
Mentos.
it.
Yeah.
What is your favorite dice, either a set or a type?
Not really. I'm a bit of a... I don't really have like this is my set. I used to have this is my DMing set, this is my playing set. But actually right now I think I've just created like 2 games in a row that use D8s. I'm into the D8. D8 is a good size.
Oh, interesting. Haven't heard of a D8 system before, so I have to look into this. On that note then, what is your favorite game to introduce to new players?
To introduce to new players, I do like... It sort of depends a little bit on the audience. But I think at the moment, the one I tend to use is Blades in the Dark, or one of the hacks. It's merely because I've written a hack recently myself and I know the rules inside and out, and I can almost introduce new players to it without actually looking at the rule book. So it's just very easy for me.
So Forge in the Dark is your jam?
Yeah,
Awesome.
Forge in the Dark is my jam.
Tabletop accessory must-have?
I'm a stationery person. I'm very particular about my pens and pencils. I have to have like the specific pencil with the specific eraser, must have it in order to write on character sheets and things.
Excellent. And final question, if you could have a companion /animal /robot, what would it be?
Well, I've already got 2 cats and one of them just refuses to ever leave my lap. So I think I've already got the companion that I would have. I specifically did ask it when I was adopting them, I need the most codependent cat you have.
Yeah.
And boy, did they deliver. But I think if I had to add another one, I would probably add some form of robot pet that wanders around and you can give it little prompts. You can give it a robot treat and it does, and it goes in a certain direction or things like that. I think that would be
the ultimate.
Yeah, that would be the addition to the household that I would make.
Excellent. Thank you.
No worries.
So pivoting a little bit away from the hospitality stuff, do you have a favorite TTRPG gaming related memory that you'd love to share with our audience?
Ooh, I really love, maybe this isn't one specific memory, but I do love running for people who think outside the box and will run their characters' flaws. So if they are all about, learning things, maybe they're going to pilfer a book that they know that will have bad consequences, but they just can't help it. And I really love those characters they don't play perfect people. They play silly goobers and people who just can't, they're not honorable, I should say.
Does that also feed into why you've moved into loving horror so much? Can you tell us a little bit about how you discovered horror TTRPGs and what that journey has been like? And if you have a favorite horror TTRPG as well.
I discovered it through my current favorite, which is Call of Cthulhu. So it was just a small group of us over the pandemic, and we decided to pick up something new. And my GM happened to pick up one of the intro games. And I went, this is fantastic. I love the fact that we are just, I'm just Jane from accounting. And there is no superhero powers. And if there is superhero powers, there is a big cost associated. I can go mad. And yes, and I also love the fact that your mentality is also something to be protected, not just your physical. I feel like that is a really fun element to play in, because horror, I feel like even if you read or watch horror, yes, sometimes, body horror is a real thing, but certain images that are elicited from the genre just it really does something. I'm not very articulate, sorry, but it sends shivers, tingles up my spine in a very exciting way. And I think that people who enjoy horror kind of understand what I'm talking about. But also, a key to good horror some is making it accessible to people. So it isn't those big action moments of, oh, you've, cut off their arm and you're now like beating them with that arm. That in fact is very goofy and, would probably elicit laughs rather than terror. You want to make it something that everyone has experience with. The is it called the hangnail? Like a lot of people get that kind of ugh when you when you describe picking at it and the sensation. And I won't go further because this isn't a horror podcast, but
I was going to say I have a very similar a scenario that I run. It is for D&D, but the horror element of it is they go into like this house and it's very like damp and cold, and I describe it as being like the worst Brunswick share house you've ever been in, with like mold running up the walls and stuff. And everyone at the table, like as long as like they've been like Melbourne based, has like this very visceral reaction to it. They're like, oh no. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I do not like that at all.
I agree. Like horror is so good because it doesn't take much to describe a bad situation. Like again, similar to you guys, I've got like one horror one shot that I have, and I describe one scene. It's not even that gross, but the amount of players who've had like almost a visceral reaction to it is just it's very gratifying to see when you get that.
And I think as a GM, there is a element of what is it? It's you versus the players because you're running all of the enemies. So I think horror really leans into that. That you're just like, it's not fun unless someone goes insane. It's not fun unless there is a real chance of you passing away.
Yeah, I can't remember what I was either watching or listening to about that really interesting tension. Actually, no, I know exactly what it was now. It was the review that Quinn's Quest did of Mothership, where he was talking about how Mothership does this really interesting thing where it encourages you to lean into the following threads and leaning into going into risky situations. So it finds that balance between the desire for self-preservation and the other thing that makes horror good, which is the opposite of that, which is, going deliberately into danger, and that Mothership holds that space really well and holds that tension really well. And I think you're right there, Sasa. And I think this possibly leads back to what you were saying before about with your favorite gaming related memory of you like it when people lean into either the goofiness or like those flaws or whatever, because those are what ultimately sort of like push, like particularly in horror, push against the survival instinct, right? It's like, well, maybe I do want to open this eldritch tomb. It might be bad for my mental state, but I'm just so curious, I have to know.
There is I don't know if it's a poem, if it's a quote. Have you heard of what is it? It's Kurt Vonnegut. Tiger got to hunt, bird got to fly. Man got to sit and wonder why. Tiger got to sleep, bird got to land. Man got to tell himself he understand. And I think that really plays into horror, because it's the whole thing of there's a lot of people that's like, oh, why would you open that door? Why would you run upstairs? And I think it is that humans have that innate curiosity, but also I think that for humans, once you see the thing, it becomes less threatening. I don't know if either of you have experienced it, but when you close your eyes when you're taking a shower, and sometimes you're just like, oh, is there something there? Because you feel so vulnerable. And then when you open your eyes, you're like, oh, of course not. This is just my bathroom.
It's like when you're in the dark and like you turn on all the lights so you can see everything and you're like, oh, there's actually nothing here. I can see everything. Everything's fine.
Yes.
So you love Call of Cthulhu specifically. Now, I know that you've written a Call of Cthulhu scenario set in Melbourne. Can you, obviously without giving away any major spoilers, can you tell us a little bit about how this came to be, a little bit about the plot?
Oh, so I think it is more accurate to say that I have ran a series of Melbourne one-shots. Writing is very generous to say, because it is just a series of dot points, and and I just take it from there. So the reason why Melbourne is so in 1920s we've had under 100 years of history at that point, but it's also very accessible for Melbourne NARM-based players. They know the fact that it is King William, Queen Elizabeth, right? They know the grid, and they also know the suburbs. So I just need to patch a little bit of history notes here and there. And we have a lot of people that are new to Melbourne. Maybe they've moved from international locations or even to state locations, and it's a good way for people to learn about Melbourne. My Call of Cthulhu things tend to be like fun history fact or fun geographic fact. So you get to learn a little bit about your city while running away or, desperately trying to find a solution to this eldritch being that is plaguing your characters. But yeah, I just feel like, why not set something for home? I'm not going to know New York or Chicago, London more than I know Melbourne, right?
Well, it's that old adage of write what you know.
Yes.
And I completely agree. I've actually played one of your games, and it was set on a train in Belgrave, and it felt very close to home for me.
I wonder if that adds the extra horror element.
Oh no, I'm on the Furtry Gully
Everything's
line.
familiar. Yeah.
Yes. And but that's the other thing, because so if you're setting it back to, because Call of Cthulhu, you can set it any time, but famously it is a 1920s ish era game. So you're kind of in a rural setting in 1920s. So your trains, I mean, we complain about our train schedule now, but back then, you would have no idea. Well, because you're so far out for back then. If your train was delayed by 20 minutes, so it's a case of, has my train been replaced by an eldritch being, or is it just a little late?
Amazing. And what has been the reception to these games? What has been the feedback that you've gotten from running these set in Melbourne?
I think players, I think they're bolder in making choices because they know what's around. They know, for example, if we look at the city, they know where the Yarra River is. So if there's a big fire, they know where, I tell people Spring Street was called Spring Street because once upon a time there was a well there and you could get clean water. And so people, they feel like, yeah, we'll just head down Exhibition, or they'll be like, oh, the Queen Vic Market's right there, right? So, if we need supplies, bam, we know where to go to. So I think it cuts down a lot of the umming and ahhing at the table, and people make quicker, firmer decisions.
Fascinating. And what has been the most either interesting or challenging part of building in specifically the Cthulhu mythos into an historical period of Melbourne?
Well, I think it's not surprising based on the earlier part of conversation. So I get rid of all of the socio-economic things about the 1920s, and I just say we're just playing the tech and the fashion of the 1920s. And then it's typically for their characters just about like the technological challenge, because the lovely thing with Call of Cthulhu is it's written that things don't have to make physical sense. And in fact, that's part of the horror for your characters. You know, your characters now know that up is diagonal left, and it's also the line and T on Tuesdays. And that is, you know, okay. Or is it okay? So I
Depends on whether or not you make or fail that intelligence
yes.
The sanity.
check, I guess.
Yes. Yes. So in that way, I do think Call of Cthulhu is a forgiving system, because yeah, you don't have to, you know, something that is a giant eldritch being, if they so choose, can fit into someone's pocket watch.
Fantastic. Alrighty. So I guess sort of like on that question and maybe slightly diagonal, depending on your sense of direction right now, what are your future plans? Do you have any upcoming events? Do you have anything that you would like to plug? I know that you've just welcomed a brand new member to your family, so things might be a little bit tentative right now, but yeah, what's coming up in the world of Pause Menu?
Well, we have fingers crossed this will, because once again, everything's a little bit up in the air right now, but fingers crossed, come Feb, we will host the Great Game, which is a King's Poisoner tourney-style event, hoping that it's, will bring people in to the world of Australian indie TTRPGs. We hope to continue to have more Call of Cthulhu events, D&D events. I am looking into LARP events, and I can't, how do I say, this doesn't feel real in December, but come June, July, Pause Menu is going to be in a new space.
Oh.
Yes, so we are very lucky in that we get to learn from our first space, heading into a new space. We're going to keep it in Fitzroy, but we're keeping everything else to ourselves for now.
Oh, that's a big
I
secret.
feel like a scoop.
I do want to.
You heard it here first, folks.
We do occasionally get scoops on this podcast. This is true. So with the King's Poisoner tournament style, so some of our audience might not know what a King's Poisoner is. Do you feel, I have a vague understanding of it, but do you feel qualified to pitch a King's Poisoner just so that people know what it is, who developed it, what the system sort of looks like?
Well, King's Poisoner, I would say, is a blackjack-style card game in collaboration with storytelling, which creates the drama that TTRPGs have. So in this game, one person is a monarch, but I should also say you don't have to theme it to just, kings and a royal court. You could also have it as a CEO and their board, or even we are members of a resistance. The theming is up to you, but the idea is that one person is in a state, is in a higher power, and everybody else is quote unquote trusted by that person in power. So it is up to the people who are disempowered if they're going to try to assassinate. I will say for the sake of ease, to assassinate the king, or if they want to say, hey, my conspirator here is trying to get you, and now you should reward me because I'm saving you. So there is a little bit of that sort of trust and dare in this game. But the storytelling, instead of rolling dice, it really is that blackjack style of you don't want to, well, you want to hit 21, but nothing else. And so, yes, it is a game where you have to take big swings, but your big swings may pan out to some beautiful moments, but it can also fall short depending on what the cards want to give you. But it's also super easy to play, really quick for a TTRPG because it is done in 1 to 2 hours. And yeah, it is a heck of a lot of fun to play.
It's also technically GM-less, isn't it?
Yes, it is a GM-less game. As long as you know how to play blackjack, you're good. But in the Great Game, which is the pause menu tourney event for King's Poisoner, there will be someone that is the dealer. That way you don't even need to know about blackjack.
So when is this tourney taking place? Do we have more confirmed dates, or is it still a little bit ephemeral right now?
We are thinking it is February. There will be chances to play at pause menu this week, but also in January as well. So if you're on the podcast and you think, hey, I want to play a blackjack style TTRPG, have a look on our website because it's free to attend. You just need to register and play a couple of hands because, yeah, it is, what is it? I didn't know what I was getting into when I got into it. And yes, I can only say just do it. Yes, you won't regret it.
Well, that's very exciting, and I'm sure our Melbourne-based listeners will be watching your website and social media eagerly to find out how they can sign up for that. So I think on that note, unless you had anything else you wanted to discuss, Sasa, we might jump into our Fast Five.
Okay, yeah, go for it. Let's do this.
Fantastic. So, Sasa, you are at the table. Everything is set up. The GM has everything that they require. What do you think is the best gaming table snack? What do you need to be eating or consuming during a TTRPG session?
As a new mother, jelly beans. It won't get on your hands. There are no crumbs. It is fast. It is efficient, and you get some good sugar inside.
I've never heard that answer before, but it's amazing.
We have not had jelly beans before, and I do think that is a fantastic forerunner for sweets that are not messy. Amazing. The second question is I guess there are two different answers we will accept. What is your favorite dice? Now, this could either be dice size or if you have a favorite dice set.
Ooh, so it's very, it is very me. So at pause menu, we pick up dice from the community because they leave it at pause menu. We keep it behind the bar for months on end. We have a little communal, a dice jar, essentially, to say, if this is one of your dice, please take it home. And there was one that was sitting for 2 months, and I went, right, this is for me, because it is a blood red dice and with a bat as the 20. And I, of course, am running Curse of Strahd, and I thought, this is too perfect. Mysterious dice that has come into my life. Yeah, you're my favorite now.
Fated to be, for sure. What is if you had a brand new group of people interested in playing TTRPGs, didn't know where to start, what would be the game that you would introduce them to? What would be the game you'd run for them?
Oh, that is hard, Stevie. That is rude to say for fast, because I run D&D and Call of Cthulhu, but I actually think those systems are very a little bit more involved than some of the other TTRPGs out there. I might introduce someone to a GM-less game called A Quiet Year. I actually think, because the fact that everyone can be involved and you are essentially world building, and I think that could be a very fun entry point. And the fact that you have prompts for each of the cards, I think makes it a little bit, because I think the thing that some new players, before they come in, they worry about what to do. And I think that the prompts are a good little rule guide. Not guide, but I guess it just removes some of the, I can do anything ness of TTRPGs.
For sure. It gives people a sense of direction. Fantastic. Okay, so you've got your game all set up, you've got your favorite dice, you've got your jelly beans. What else must you have at the TTRPG table? What is an essential?
If it's running with friends, I think, what is it? Something that we don't talk about is the fact that if it's a big 3-hour session, you are going to look at your phone if it's not your turn. So I actually think the memes channel for your group is essential because you don't want to take attention away from what's happening at the table, but you're still leaving space for someone to share what they have found online.
I love that. It still keeps people present in the group without distracting. Amazing. And final question, if you could have a companion or a minion or like a little robot, sort of like a familiar in D&D, what would it be?
I think it have to be a little pseudo dragon. They're tiny dragons and they are fey creatures. And they're very cheeky, and I really like that about them.
I love that. That is everything for the Fast Five. Now, thank you so much, Sasa. And before we let you go, where can people find out more about you and about Pause Menu?
So we, of course, can be found through our website, www.pausemenu.com.au. We also have an Instagram. So if you just look for Pause Menu Cafe Bar and _ between each of those words, you'll find us there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sasa. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
And now let's get into some news. So first up in the news, I have a fantastic upcoming Kickstarter by the lovely folks over at Storybrewers Roleplaying. Storybrewers Roleplaying are most famously known for their Jane Austen-inspired TTRPG, Good Society, and for Fight with Spirit, a sports drama RPG that won the PAX Oz Indie Showcase in 2024. They have a brand new Kickstarter launching on the 28th of January called My Late Father's Correspondence. Now, to tell you a little bit about this game from the Kickstarter page, My Late Father's Correspondence is an epistolary role-playing game that puts you at the heart of an unfolding family drama. Set in 1832 Hampshire, England, this game is a solo or duet role-playing experience played entirely through letters. It follows a story that you will respond to over time. This game has been painstakingly compiled with over 65 pages of detailed handwritten letters and documents. Even the postmarks stamped on each letter, ink colors, and stationery have been historically researched and considered. So if you want to follow this Kickstarter and be notified for when it goes live, we will leave a link in the show notes, but it will be officially launching on the 28th of January 2025. The second piece of news comes from our Discord server. So if you aren't in the ARC Discord server, you probably should join because it's happening, it's friendly, and it's fun. This comes from Discord user Lucas84, and he writes, I'm partnering with Nam Nagu Library to create a new inclusive community gaming space available Sunday afternoons, 12 to 4 p.m. fortnightly. The library is located next to Victoria Markets, has a dedicated maker space, and we want to encourage people to come hang out and connect over board games, TTRPGs, and war games. It will be free for all, but we do need volunteers to help teach new players and look after the collections of games and miniatures on offer. offer. We're aiming to have the first session on Sunday the 2nd of February 2025. If you are interested in getting involved, please contact me for more details. So I'll make sure that the link, as always, to the ARC Discord is in the show notes, and if that is something that you are close to and want to get involved in, just find Lucas84 in the members on the ARC Discord and shoot him a message.
Some people have been asking us what the best thing they can do is to support the podcast. And honestly, it's rating and reviewing it wherever you're listening to it. It really does help us reach brand new audiences and other listeners just like you. TTRPGs are for everybody, and we want to reach as many people as possible. No matter where you're from, we want you to be part of the discussion, part of the roll call here at Aussie Roll Call.
This podcast is produced in affiliation with the Australian roleplay community. If you'd like to join the ARC community, head to arcrpg.org, where you'll find a link to our vibrant and inclusive Discord server. Your hosts have been Kate O'Sullivan, Dan Machuca, and Stevie Schaefer. Cover art by Helen Graham of Juimon Studios. Title music is Sweet Sunday Groove by Slailkey. Interstitial music is Newer Wave by Kevin MacLeod, used under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. Production by Stevie Schaefer.